So if your dream is to, I don't know, become a swim instructor, become the best damn swim instructor you can. Because that's what I did in all of the different paths that I plied, was I tried to be the best I absolutely could be.
Wow.
And
I
let the chips fall where
love
they
that.
may. Yeah.
And let the chips roll where they may. Absolutely. Have you ever wondered how a hot dog vendor at Shea Stadium could go on to become a Pulitzer Prize-nominated journalist? Today, I'm thrilled to sit down with Russ Banham, a storyteller whose journey embodies resilience, reinvention, and an unwavering commitment to chasing new opportunities, no matter the odds. Russ's life is a testament to the power of adaptability and hustle. From his early days throwing hot dogs to acting alongside Bill Murray in Meatballs, he later became an award-winning journalist and authored 34 books, including the corporate histories of icons like Ford, Boeing, Coors, and Harvard Business School. Russ has continuously embraced reinvention. His ability to thrive through the setbacks and seize opportunities makes his story a masterclass in navigating the unexpected. Russ's mantra, "It just doesn't matter," is a powerful reminder to focus on what truly matters: family, friends, and the journey itself. His story proves that humor, hustling, and having an open mind can transform even the most winding paths into extraordinary success. Get ready to laugh, learn, and be inspired by Russ Banham's incredible journey on this episode of Navigating No. Awesome. Russ, thank you so much for coming on. I wanted to say thank you to you because I love when people introduce me because my resume seems so long, but your resume and achievements, there was no straight line to your achievements, but oh my gosh, your accomplishments, as your resume is so long, like you have done almost everything. And I've been looking so forward to this interview with you because I mean, it's been 2 months in the making. So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, now that I'm doing this show,
that's right. You didn't know that it was on. We were doing video too.
Missing component, in that mile-long resume. Yeah.
Well, I love it because you switched your glasses, and I told you that you had these Mel Robbins glasses, and
I did.
And you had mentioned that. I guess the correct reply is thank you.
Do this, and you had to constantly do that, so it kind of takes away any kind of cool cachet. I'm gonna push it up my nose. Yeah.
Well, I just started wearing readers this year, I guess a year and a half ago, and I'm 47, and I'm just like, it's a whole new ball game for me. So I can feel your pain. I understand.
Yeah, it's I'm 70.
You still look like a spring chicken. How do you stay in such great shape? Like, I know that basketball, I mean, I know you're athletic, but what is it that you do that is like, you're rocking it, mister?
Well, I've been boxing for the last 25 years, and I'm holding my shoulder because I won't be able to box. I just found out this week I have some horrible thing called a bioconcavity, literally from years of throwing right crosses at a 300-pound heavy bag. And it's gone through my scapula and formed a new cavity. And I've had extreme pain in my right shoulder for the longest time, the last couple of years. So now all I can really do is hit the paddles.
Or set up the next Mike Tyson fight. I guess we could get you on. Oh, okay. Yeah. That works. We'll add that to your resume.
Sylvester Stallone said yesterday that he deserves an Academy Award for that performance. Because he scraped the whole damn thing. It was
you got to wonder. I do wonder. I mean, you see his training and you were just like, the guy is still an animal.
Obviously it was staged. At least that's my feeling. And I'm a huge boxing fan and have been, since when I was young and would get to watch Ali. My dad, Friday night at the fights, they called it as a kid in New York on WPIX. And I used to watch that. And anyway, so I box, I hike a lot. I have a 20-pound vest made out of sand. And I do that. I hike in the Verdugo Hills, about 2 miles from where we live in LA in La Cañada, Flint Ridge. And then I go to Gold's Gym. I do a lot of weightlifting. And I my whole life. So, because people ask me, they see the old guy at the gym, and I'm probably
Mhm.
the oldest one at Gold's now, at least the one nearby us. And they say, how old are you? And I love when they do this, and I tell them,
Mhm.
and then jaws sort of drop. And I explain to them, well, how long have you been working out? And I have to tell them my whole life. I mean,
Your
since
whole
high
well,
school.
it's a lifestyle, right? It is
It
a
is.
lifestyle,
It
and
really is. Yeah.
I was actually a personal trainer at Gold's, and you talk
Yeah.
about you have this work ethic that is phenomenal for other people, and somebody should look up to you. But I was the number one sales rep of all Gold's gyms, and it
Wow.
I that was like a piece of me that I had this ability to connect with people and bring them into my community. And I know for a fact that you were the number one vendor for hot dog sales at the Mets. And was that similar? Like, what was your trick at that age that you
Well,
were
gosh,
able
and
to
I'm
hit that?
hoping my fellow vendors from that wonderful period of my life, as you get older, you recall your boyhood. You realize it's the best time of your life for
Hmm.
many. I shouldn't
Hmm.
say for all men, but certainly for me. I was 14, and I had a friend who knew somebody who knew somebody, and I was able to get a job as a vendor. Now, there's a union there for the vendors, so it was like on the waterfront, that Brando movie. You had you stood there and you tried to conjure this image of what you thought they thought was the ideal vendor. You
Hmm.
sort of smile and just stick your chest out to get selected. And so I did that, didn't get it picked a few times, finally got picked, and realized that the way they would continue to bring me back was by me selling more than any other vendor there. And
Oh, I
right from
love
the
that.
get-go, I did that. I was a cross-country runner at the time in high school and played basketball. And so I had the ability to run up
The
the
stadium stairs.
this is Shea Stadium. It's gone now, but they had these ramps there, and
Yeah.
I would run up them, and sometimes they would cross, and I would climb over, and you'd look down to your death if you. But I would lift my bin of hot dogs, and then just jump over to the other. And honestly, at the end of every game, they would post the top vendor for that day, and for the 7 years that I happily worked there,
Hmm.
I was number one.
How much were hot dogs back then?
40 hot dogs were 60 cents, and beers were 90 cents. Soda was 25 cents, as were peanuts. I sold them all.
Were you able to sell beer, or was it just the hot dogs at your age?
18, I was able to sell beer. They lowered the age because of the because we were all going to
Because in New
Vietnam.
York.
Well, yeah, listen, I was
Oh,
drafted twice, but
oh
it
wow.
was a lottery then,
Hmm.
and it was just ridiculous sending men
Hmm.
to potentially their deaths, and they couldn't have a drink because it was
Hmm.
21 at that time. And of course, they
And
loaded up.
when you were doing this, was
Yeah.
what was it teaching you? It was obviously work ethic, but did you see yourself selling hot dogs and starting your own hot dog business, or
No, never.
what stopped you from doing that? Like, I mean, if you were so successful at it, what did you do?
Well, it's funny because I'd probably be number one in the union. It was seniority based. Probably be making more money than I've made across the
Yeah,
extent
yeah,
of my
yeah,
career, and I would have seen a lot of great games.
yeah,
For a while there, the Yankees played. I think it was 2 seasons because Yankee Stadium was being refurbished before it was ultimately demolished, unfortunately. And so I worked the Yankee games and the Met games, and made more money than my father that summer. Uh, that's
Oh,
But what it
I,
taught me
yeah.
was that I had to do it to the absolute best of my ability, to my ultimate capacity.
Hmm.
If that meant I had to run up ramps, I was going to run up ramps. So when I became an actor, I translated that into I would be the one person that went to every single audition, casting director, producer. I would, what we called making the rounds in
Yeah.
Manhattan. I would do it better than any other person looking to become an actor, and that would yield me some success, and then it did.
Well,
Uh,
absolutely. Then, and that brings us to, I mean, you landed in with Meatballs with Bill Murray, which was a
so,
summer hit. And
yep.
how did that feel? Like when you as an actor myself, I remember getting roles and getting SAG commercials and things. It's like you get excited, but until they start rolling and that paycheck starts coming in, it's like, oh, like what does this feel like? What did it feel like to hit a movie that was a blockbuster?
Now, this is probably the answer you're not looking for. I fully expected it to happen. I really did. In my mind, and I don't know if it was narcissism or just cockiness. I was so self-assured. I thought that I was destined to achieve this iterative greatness. And I say iterative because I was in off Broadway plays, and I got some renown that led to an agent. And then I was in off Broadway plays. Then I was on Broadway, and I just thought, well, this is how it's done. I'm climbing
This step, the ladder that's going up.
Yes, and of course, at the top of the ladder was stardom, and that I could not see any impediments in my way. So when I did Meatballs, and then that led to an offer from Paramount Pictures. They had the old studio system. I was offered a 7-year contract to be a studio player. And then, but then I had an agent from California, from LA, flew to New York to meet with my New York agents. He saw a taping that I did of a series of monologues and scenes. And he convinced my New York agents to turn down that contract, and that instead he was going to get me, pilot season, what you would call pilot season. They don't have it anymore today, but it was a period of a couple months when all the studios and all the film studios and the television networks, the three of them, would have their pilots. He would get me a pilot. So my agent said, let's see how you do during this pilot season. And I flew out there, and I was offered I don't think I mentioned this before publicly, but I was offered one of the leads in Dukes of Hazzard. I screen tested with John Schneider.
Really?
And the agent, Mike Greenfield was his name. He said to me, Westerns are dead. This show, Dukes of Hazzard, it's not going anywhere. I know it's not. It's kind of like a country Western show. It's not going anywhere. And I got an offer from Norman Lear to do a sitcom. And at that time, Norman Lear had 5 of the 10 top shows in the Nielsen's ratings. All in the Family, Maude, Sanford and Son. He had 5 of them. And I was offered to be in a sitcom called Joe's World. And again, I thought this was just another rung on the ladder, but it failed. We did
13 episodes.
Yeah. And then it was canceled. And the only good thing that came out of it was that Christopher Knight, who played Peter Brady in the Brady Bunch, has been my lifelong friend. He was just here for my birthday party out there.
Oh, that's awesome.
Birthday party for me. Yeah.
Did that feel like a sucker punch? Like, did you feel like, wow, that was kind of a reality hit? Or what was the emotional hit with that?
Again, I thought that it was just a minor inconvenience, and that I would be doing something else within a couple months. And then a couple months passed, and then a year passed, and then 2 years passed. I was screen tested for other stuff. I no longer was that same person I was when I was younger. In a way, I grew up. My maturity level kicked in, and I started to develop self-consciousness as an actor, and I lost my cocksuredness.
Sure.
Yeah. And,
well, do you remember? Speaking of baseball, do you remember For the Love of the Game with Kevin Costner?
No, I didn't see. Is that a film?
It is, and it's a great baseball movie. At the very end, he's throwing a no-hitter.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And he's throwing a no-hitter, and the very last batter they put a pinch hitter in because they want a rookie to come up against him, and it's either Kevin Costner, who's not the rookie anymore, and it's like he against him, and it's just like this guy has no idea the gravity that's going up against it, and it was like but
Wow.
Costner understood what was
Yeah.
at stake, right? Like it's just this one more at bat determines what happens in this game. And this kid is just like, I just want to hit it, right? And so it's almost seasoned when you become seasoned and you realize that there is pain that comes from rejections and these consequences of choices.
Yeah. I was married at the time. My wife left me, and not just because of I failed, but it was how I poorly grappled with failure. And I think it was the drinking, the pot smoking, morning, noon, and night at that point in my life. I went back we returned to New York City, my tail between my legs.
Well, so really quick,
yeah.
I want to pivot really quick back to the LA part. Like when you
Sure.
didn't get Dukes of Hazzard and you
Yeah.
chose to go with Joe's World, were you starting to blame yourself? Were you starting to blame your agent? Were you mad? Like, even though you believed like, oh, it'll just be the next one, were you starting to be a little resentful and start to question the people that were around you?
No, I didn't. I didn't. It was completely my fault, is the way I looked at it. And it was just fortune,
Mm-hmm.
bad luck on my part. I mean, it's not easy for me to put in just a few sentences
Oh, of course. Yeah.
the full collapse that I experienced. I didn't understand it, and then to return to New York, and friends and family who didn't understand it and would ask questions like, "So when's your next TV show?
Yeah.
When's your next movie?" And they're fully aware that I'm auditioning, but I'm not getting any parts.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I'd been rejected. There was a playwright I worked with, and I remember he actually wrote this, and he talked about me having this meteoric career that just sputtered
Mm.
uh, within a period of no time,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what happened to me.
Did you
And
start to feel that imposter syndrome when you got back to New York? Like, did you start to think maybe I wasn't good enough, or I didn't deserve to be here?
I think,
Were all those outside
yeah,
voices starting to actually take an effect on you?
I think I never felt imposter syndrome, and this is going to be sound surprising, because when I was in college, in the theater department, I was known as a director.
Mm.
That's what I did. I directed plays and musicals in college, and I had this faint but unpronounced hope of becoming a playwright. I didn't want to tell anyone that, because it just seemed kind of pompous to think that I could be a playwright. But that's deeply what I wanted to be. I didn't
Sure.
want to become an actor, and I was part of a playwrights group, and the first time I ever performed in New York, it was to act in one of my fellow playwrights' plays,
Mm.
and the play did not get good notices. I got good notices, but nonetheless, once I just like when I became a vendor, once I decided I would become an actor, I did it to the best of my ability. So my
And
imposter syndrome,
that's so important. I
yeah,
really think people should hear that. It's like no matter what industry you get in, as long as you put your intent and your purpose behind it, if you want to
yeah,
succeed at something, go
yeah,
and exceed expectations, because part of the problem is people don't even show up. But if you just at least show up, you're already halfway there.
it's true. My
Um,
imposter kicked in when I did what I had to do to make a living, to support myself and my family, and that's when I became a business journalist. Um, and I was able, through a dear friend and mentor who had actually acted with me on Broadway
mhm.
and had this side gig as a business journalist, who realized my despair and said to me on many an occasion over that 2-year period when I couldn't get any work as an actor, "I can get you work writing about insurance for this daily business newspaper called the Journal of Commerce." And finally, when my daughter was born, my first child, in 1986, is when I bit the bullet and worked with him to write my first article.
Mm-hmm.
And it was it was on spec, as they called it, which meant it would be presented to the Journal of Commerce, and if they wanted to publish it, I'd get paid $100, and I was getting $5,000 a week
Uh-huh.
on Joe's World, $100, and if they didn't want to publish it, I got nothing. And
So
that's
you went from well, I guess basically being a contractor within the acting world to going into journalism, and it's like it was a pay cut. Let's say, is this? But you're
yeah.
in New York. Is this before or after you did SNL? Was SNL prior to this, or before you even moved out to LA the
So
first time?
SNL was Meatballs wrapped
Mm-hmm.
in 1978. And it was it was a summer movie, so we shot it, of course, in the summer in Canada. And Bill Murray and I were the only New Yorkers doing Meatballs. So when we got back to New York, I would meet Bill for lunch. We'd get
Mm-hmm.
together, and then he said to me, I mean, just barely a few weeks had gone by, and he said, "We're going to do the first episode of SNL." And the Stones are the musical guests and the hosts.
No way.
Yeah, and so he said, and I said, I love the Stones. I mean, who didn't love the Stones?
Come
So
on,
he
Mick.
said, yeah, he said, why don't you, come in, you walk in with me and then you can hang out. And I said, even better, Matt Craven, who was also in Meatballs, and has had a wonderful career as a character actor,
Mm-hmm.
he was coming to New York to stay with me. He'd never been to New York. He was younger than I at the
Mm-hmm.
time. So I said, can I bring Matt? And he said, absolutely. So we sat in on the Stones during the rehearsals. They were amazing. And then Dan Aykroyd one day came over to me and he said, hey, listen, he said, could you do me a favor? Would you run down to 42nd Street and pick up some boo for us? And I said, sure, absolutely. And then I went over to Bill and I said, Dan wants me to pick up something called boo. What is that?
I don't even know what it is.
It's, it's weed. But Dan was from Canada, and I'm a New
Hey,
Yorker. We called it
yeah.
weed pot, grass, and of course, I knew exactly where to get it on 42nd Street. You go into these shops that look like a convenience store, and in the back was a window, and you would, buy a nickel or a dime of weed. And so I did. I did that, and
Oh
then
my gosh.
I brought it to Dan, and they were, Keith Richards was there in the room, and Charlie Watts, and Danny's rolling up, and I'm smoking weed with the members of the SNL cast. They're not ready for primetime players, and the Stones,
Oh,
which was
and
great.
everybody's getting stoned with the Stones.
And that's when Danny said to me and Matt, "Why don't you guys make a buck and be in some of the scenes?" So we were in 3 scenes.
Oh, that's a great full circle. I love
Yeah,
well
it was
as
it was fantastic. And then we went to the party at the Essex House, but I can't tell you that story.
that'll be on another episode. Oh my
I
gosh,
have
that is
children and grandchildren now, so I can't tell you that story.
oh my god. As a child of 2 hippies who grew up watering friends' pot plants, I can relate to that story. I just never had heard Boo, even though I grew up watching what was the Canadian SNL version? It was SCTV.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And then Stripes and they're
Martin
so
Short.
funny.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
interesting. So, Meatballs was the writer, one of the writers of Meatballs was Danny Goldberg, one of my closest and dearest friends in life, who just passed away a year and a half ago. He also produced Meatballs. He went on to do many other shows with Ivan Reitman, also a Canadian.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he did the Hangover series too, Danny. But Danny, Ivan, Martin Short, and Eugene Levy
Mm-hmm.
all went to the same college.
Well,
Those
and I
four
mean, even all of
titans
those
of
guys are still working. All of those
and they're
guys are still
yeah.
working.
But
And
and if you look at their careers, those 4 men, it's extraordinary. And they, yeah. And as a matter of fact, Danny and Ivan with the other two, Danny and Ivan did a college movie called, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of it, but it was based on a banned book. And when the movie came out, they were arrested for, yeah, for, I guess, an indecent movie.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
that time. I always said to Danny, I said, you need to write a movie about that
Yeah.
experience. You four guys are icons.
But
So,
I mean, they're icons and they're still friends and they still connect.
yeah.
And I'm assuming, do you still have those connections? Do you still talk to Bill Murray or?
No, Danny was the only connection that remained through Meatballs. We had a standing lunch every month here in LA. And yeah, and as I say, he passed away a year and a half ago. One of just the most gentle, kind, truly creative geniuses I've ever met. But
Oh my gosh, that
anyway,
is a great story.
yeah.
And so you're back in New York and
Oh, I got to wait
you're
real quickly. I got to tell you that my last Bill Murray story.
Okay.
So this ties in. I'm back in New York now. I'm writing on spec for the Journal of Commerce on a freelance basis, and then
$100 per shot, right?
that's right. And then then that's when my daughter was born, and the editor of the Journal, if I was getting in there all the time, the editor said, "I want to bring you on as a full-time reporter." And so that's when I came to the Journal, and now I'm a full-time reporter. And Bill is shooting Ghostbusters 2 downtown Manhattan. We were on Wall Street, and that's the last time I saw him. With a friend, a colleague from the newspaper. I went to where they were shooting right outside Delmonico's, the famous New York restaurant. And I said, Bill, I'm waving, and he sees me, and he brings me on the set, and Ivan's there, and I'm giving Ivan a big hug, and Bill. And then my colleague said, "So what was Russ like in Meatballs?" And you may recall I had a big head of hair. And Bill said, "Wow, Russ's hair would come on camera about a minute before Russ did." And he thought it was like some sort of scene stealing mechanism, my friend. Oh, so Russ could steal the scene? Like, it took that long for my face to appear. And I just thought it was so funny because that was Bill.
Oh, he's quick.
Oh,
still quick.
Genius, yeah.
100%. And I mean, he's still got it. You still see in the movies and such. All right. So you're in New York, you're writing financial stuff, and you kind of never realized that's what you were going to get into, but you're obviously finding like you're good at it. Right. And all of a sudden things start to blossom and you hit, Enron, you become a Pulitzer Prize-nominated journalist. And it's like, how did that go? I mean, is that the point where you were like, okay, I'm over the imposter syndrome of being a writer? Am I good enough? What was that?
It would take years. So what happened was I'm surrounded by bona fide journalists. I didn't go to journalism school. And they were from Columbia, Columbia School of from Harvard, from Yale, literally 3 guys. I still remember all 3, all wonderful people. I loved all of the people at the Journal of Commerce. I was in a giant newsroom. I loved the old timers there. When the advertising guys, they were 1 floor below us. There was a separation between, legitimate journalism and advertising.
Yeah.
If an advertising guy came onto the newsroom floor, these guys in their 60s would get their pens and they would throw it at the advertising guy. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Because, that's what it was like. But
it's the old boys club.
I loved it. But I thought I was in a movie. I thought I was playing a journalist really well in a movie. And, but the editor-in-chief, Stan Erickson was his name. He would come to me and he'd say, I know they're all trained, but you have an ability to tell a story. And that was my playwriting chops.
Sure.
And, but I still felt like an imposter. And I decided to leave the Journal of Commerce after 4 years. I got the Pulitzer nomination and start writing journalism for, Forbes and Fortune, The Economist, Financial Times, those kinds of publications, CFO magazine, Chief Executive magazine, and they just started printing my articles. But at the same time, um, I I left. I went to grad school. I decided, my dream was to become a playwright.
Hmm.
And a director, and I'm gonna go to grad school, and I did. I moved the family to Montana, mostly because I couldn't wait to get out of New York City. I grew up there. There was no mystique left for me anymore. And I mean, as a teenager, I was all over Manhattan. I mean, I was just wild. And I said,
Well,
that's it.
and it was easy. Manhattan's easier to get around on, right? I mean, it's
Yeah, it
not
really
like
is.
you're in Seattle and you're trying to go all over it. It's like
Yeah.
it is very convenient with the subway system and such. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, as an actor, of course, I traversed every inch of it.
mhm.
So I wanted something completely different, a different environment. And my wife at the time was from Montana, so we moved to Montana. I applied for a Javits Fellowship, and because of my Pulitzer nomination and the work I'd done as a journalist, and of course, I was in Meatballs. I had a relatively successful career as an actor,
Mhm.
and I could write a damn good essay.
Mhm.
I won this $40,000 fellowship, so I had some money to tide me over as I continued to write for these business magazines, and did 4 years of grad school. And Because I thought, okay, that's what I'll do. I'll become a director and a playwright, because I'm not meant to be this journalist. I don't know why I'm getting this work.
Sure.
Um, uh, and then we moved to Seattle once I got the degree, and two other kids came along from my wife now, and had a career. And she's an actor, or
Uh-huh.
was an actor at that time, and she worked nonstop in Seattle as an actor, and I worked nonstop as a director, and meanwhile kept up the writing. Um,
Had you
so
started writing books at this time, or you're still doing?
no, that's when my imposter syndrome finally vanished. I got a phone call about 28 years ago from a publisher
Mhm.
of books that specialized in corporate histories, and it was an insurance company. And of course, I had covered the insurance industry for several years by that point. And he said, "Hey, I understand that if I need someone to write a history of an insurance company, you're the guy." And I said, "Huh?
That's a
What?"
great label to have, right?
Yeah, I'm the insurance guy on my pin. And he says, "Can you write a book?" And it's like saying, "Can you run up ramps while selling hot dogs?" Of course I can do that. I can do anything
Yeah.
if I put my mind to it. And so I wrote the book, and I worked really, really hard on it. And it came out, and the client was, extremely impressed by it, as was the publisher, Maury Mann. And he then was approached by Coors to have someone write a history of that company. And of course, that was a nationally known company, and that would sell in bookstores. And Bill Coors was the grandson of the founder and the patriarch of the family, and also the CEO and chairman. And he said, he read my insurance history, and he said, "If this kid can make insurance sound interesting, imagine what we do with beer." And so I wrote that book, and it became a bestseller on the Denver Post regional bestseller list. And I realized, I guess, that my dream of becoming a successful playwright was closer to the mark than I thought. I really was
Yeah.
a good writer. It's just that my field was writing business journalism and corporate histories. And
Isn't
that
it funny? Isn't it
Yeah,
funny how like your path is moving one way, and when you come to a
yeah,
crossroad, it's kind of sometimes it's not always up to you whether you go left or right, and sometimes it's presented for you, and
it's true.
it's like with writing for me when I wrote the Sum of Four, I
Yeah.
turned it in, and the
Oh,
editor was
it's
like,
a
"You
book, by the way.
oh perfect, I can't wait to hear what you think of it, I
Okay.
love it." Um, And they were like, you kind of write like a college student. And I'm like, well, yeah, because I didn't go to school for writing. I went for Japanese and international business. So it's like, and it was funny, but at the same time, I took that challenge and I was like, I want to write a book that is going to make a difference to people. But the real reason I wrote it was because I wanted to share my story with my kids. Really, I mean, to make $1 million would be great, but it was really to pass on that lineage or that story of me, of who I am and why I am the way I am. And in a roundabout way, it was about my martial arts instructor, because he doesn't even realize, because he's gone, is that his story is being passed through me and then onto my kids and then onto the audience. Right. And it's like, I had no idea I was going to become a writer, but I did. And so it was presented to me. What did it feel like to have your first book done? Like, did that feel great?
Yeah, no, I'd be remiss in not saying I felt good. I felt
Mm-hmm.
good. I'd already become, I don't want to say inured, that's the wrong word, just used to seeing my name, my byline, in
Mm-hmm.
newspaper articles by that point, in magazines. But to have a book come out, a hardcover book, was pretty darn cool. But I would say it wasn't until I wrote The Forged Century, and
Mm-hmm.
that sold almost 1 million copies. After the Coors book came out, I was approached by a different publisher that really specialized in beautiful, large books. And they were spending a lot of money. They were willing to pay me through the roof to write the history of Ford.
Wow.
Ford was already contracted with another. I can't mention his name, I've been told. I mentioned it once before and got into some trouble, but he was a very well known historian to write its history. And then they had a parting of the ways. And by that point, I had written maybe a half a dozen books, and they asked me to write that history. And Paul Newman, he wrote the foreword. He would drive Shelbys,
Wow.
in those kinds of car races. And I talked to him on the phone too. Well, what do you need? I said, well, like 600 words, a foreword, just, your impressions of Ford. And when the book came out, The Ford Center is a beautiful sepia colored picture of a Model T making its way up a hill.
Mm-hmm.
And then it says by Russ Banham and Paul Newman. And my name's as big as him. He wrote not as big as his name. He wrote 600 words and I wrote 60,000.
Oh, I love it.
And
And that is a book. That is a
I got
book. I
billing
mean,
with Paul Newman.
I love it.
It was like,
Two
wow.
actors.
Yeah,
Oh
right.
my God, I love it.
And I think that's when I realized, this is what I was meant to do. And what a relief.
Oh,
Honestly,
I bet.
what a
Well, and then
relief to know that. The first book, by the way, that's when I was 39. I quit drinking. I got divorced, met my current wife. We've been together 30 years, and we have 2 kids. I'm sorry, we have 1 kid, and then we have the other 2 kids.
mm-hmm.
My previous marriage, and they're all here in LA. We followed the older ones down here. So,
Oh, that's awesome that you're able to stay in contact and be a part of their lives still.
oh gosh, yeah, they're we're together all the time.
Isn't that amazing as a parent?
Yeah,
And grandkids, it's like your
yeah.
that's to be around, because it's all about family. I mean, it really
Oh,
is. If you're lucky enough to have that kind of connection with your family, that's your lineage, and those are those storytelling that you're able to pass along and spend that time with them, that because we don't have that much time on this earth.
No, we don't. I mean, it's funny. You as you get older, you realize that the calculation is not how much money you have; it's how much time you have left.
Mm-hmm.
And as you get older, you're freed in many ways from ambition, and all that entails, and you really begin to appreciate what truly matters, and that's your family and your friends. Um, uh, Now, mind you, I have some financial security now that I didn't have when Joe's World was canceled. I was
little salt on that wound. Way to bring that back. I'm glad to see you're not bitter at that anymore, Russ.
I was so broke, and then out of the blue,
you could sell boo on the side. I guess you could have done that.
That's true. That's true. We could have gone into business, Blues Boo.
True, true. I always wanted a business called Rent a Blue, where like I would be your friend for the day. But then this movie Hitch came out, and so I was
Yeah.
like, well, I
Oh
guess that's kind
no,
of what.
that's right. That's right. But anyway, you were talking before about well, this idea of a door closes but a window opens. That
Yeah,
has been the case in my life, and I think for many people it is, as long as you don't box yourself into thinking this is what I have to do, this is what I'm supposed to be, I'm going to stick to it. I have friends who have had intermittent success as an actor, and who knows, maybe that might have happened for me.
yeah.
Maybe it had given it 7 years and somehow hung in there, making a living selling boo. I don't. Maybe I would have had another opportunity, but
Yeah.
I have no regrets. I
Oh, I
look at
love that. Well,
yeah,
and it's like you're set at this, and it doesn't mean that it's like it's just your passion or your priority has changed a
yeah,
little bit, and you just found love or passion or purpose in something else, and you ran with it. And I don't think that's that failure. It's just that setback that opens up that next opportunity for you,
right.
another door.
Yeah, yeah. That's it. That's it. And I remember reading something. I can't remember who said it, but it was some actor who said, um, uh, if this is what you have to do, it's the only thing that gives you, pleasure is to be an actor, then do it the rest of your life. But there's a damn good chance you're going to end up, poor and maybe not be able to have a family,
Yeah,
or if you do have a family, maybe not have the time to give them that they need
a
to
hundred
grow up
percent.
into responsible adults.
Yeah.
Uh, um,
Because
uh,
you can be a workaholic and you can give all to that, but
yeah.
it means like you're not a great dad, right? And my
Oh,
dad was a great lawyer, but he was an awful dad. He just wasn't
yeah.
around, and it was like, oh my gosh,
Right.
if
Yeah.
if I wanted to say, like, do you think that you coming to these realizations, is it because you had mentioned like family and friends are important to you, but you've also met so many people in your life and been in contact with these certain moments and connections that you've made. And I know that you wrote like the Harvard Business alumni and you met 200 leaders. It's like, are all of these people's information, do you consistently learn from them? Do you
Oh,
take little pieces and help build you who you are?
well, when you say that you do the same as you begin to interview people, their stories become part of your story. I
Mhm.
mean, when I wrote the history of Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, I met Siegfried and Roy. I brought my son along with me. Roy had already suffered the accident. We spent a day with them at their compound. It's one of our favorite stories. They're just such
Cool.
remarkable gentlemen. I mean, every company whose history I've written, I spent lots of time with their
Yeah.
CEO. So Bill Ford Jr., the CEO over at Ford, and I mentioned Bill Coors at Coors. When I wrote Boeing's history, I spent a lot of time with Jim McNerney, the CEO
Hmm.
of that company. With Harvard Business School, writing their 100-year history. Yeah, I interviewed people like Ratan Tata from the Tata Group in India, one of the great business and philanthropic stories of the last century. I interviewed Michael Bloomberg. When I wrote the history of Northern Virginia, my book, it's two books now. I wrote a second edition. It's called The Fight for Fairfax. I spent time with, Governor Terry McAuliffe. I spent a whole day with him,
Hmm.
uh, and he was considered at that time to be the candidate to beat Trump in the first election.
Hmm.
I remember him saying, I remember asking him, "Are you going to run?" And he said to me, "I'm meeting with Joe this weekend to find out if
Wow.
he's going to toss his hat in the ring." And I said, "If he does toss his hat in the ring," he said, "then I'll gracefully bow out." And yeah, spend time with people across so many different
Well,
spheres of
and it's
influence.
these experiences that have influenced you, but at the same time, it's like you've brought your family along with, right? And your friends. And it's like,
Yeah,
what a great life. And I think that if you have good people in your life, you're going to have a beautiful life. And it seems to me that you have that now.
I do. My son said to me just last week, we were talking about this, how having me there working at home his whole life, gave him a sense of security
Oh,
that children whose parents are, like you were talking about your dad, who are always at the office, on the go, traveling, that they don't have. And he is a recruiter now, my son, for a large staffing firm, and he works at home. Uh,
mm,
and he loves it because his kids, he has a 6-year-old and a 6-month-old. They get to see their dad. There's no curiosity. Like my dad would
no.
leave in the morning, and he went off to do some job that I knew nothing about, and then he
Mhm.
came home and would have his cocktail and get a little drunk, um, and then just
You
wanted to
guys would
know
go to bed.
homework. Yeah,
Well, and I mean, my wife and I make it almost like I want to call it like a system in the sense like it's like we are dedicated to having dinner together as a family every single night. And
great.
I never had that. And my wife never had that growing up. And my wife is lucky enough to work from home right now. And I obviously am remote and I travel, but I can always be back home. And it's like one of us is always at the house with our two kids. And we won't know until they're older what effect that has on them. But hearing it from you, that's very powerful. And I love that. And I will continue to use that and take that on my journey, because once again, you just gave me a gem to pass along to my kids. So I love that, Russ. Um,
Well, yeah.
our conversation could probably go on for hours, but if you were to hit one thing and tell your past self what it is that you would do to overcome this rejection, this failure, this self-doubt, what would that one thing be?
Well, I thought about it, and I'm gonna quote from the great summer camp movie, cult movie of all time, Meatballs. It just doesn't matter. If you recall Bill Murray in there, it just doesn't matter. We put so much on our shoulders
Pressure.
thinking we have to become who we think we can become, that we miss life as it's going by. We don't realize that we're going to get older someday and look back and realize, you know, it just doesn't matter. And I include Meatballs in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great. I was in this movie. I've got some terrific memories, but those memories could be something else. So I could have gone, camping with some friends during those years, and those
100%.
memories today would have equal resonance for me. I don't ever look back and think, God, I was in these movies and television series. I wrote these books. None of it mean really anything to me other than the fact that it helped pay the bills. I enjoyed doing it while I was doing it. But what it was specifically that I was doing, really, it just doesn't matter. So if your dream is to, I don't know, become a swim instructor, become the best damn swim instructor you can, because that's what I did in all of the different paths that I applied. Was I tried to be the best I absolutely could be, um,
Wow.
and
I
let the chips fall where
love
they
that.
may. Yeah,
And let the chips roll where they may. Absolutely. Russ, that is powerful. And I agree 100% for any industry or any kid coming out of college or anything like that. It's like, let it go, let it go. It doesn't really matter. I love
it
that,
really does.
Russ.
Yeah, yeah.
I know you're working on your 34th book. So what is that book and where can people reach you or contact and learn more about you?
Well, my gosh, nowadays it's so simple. You just go on, Google Chrome or any search engine, and you say, how
Where
can
can I
I?
buy Boo?
Yeah. It's funny because it leads you to the same place, my address, in Los Angeles. It's so weird. You brought
Oh,
that yeah, it's just you can look me up online. It's so simple. I have a website. My 34th book is the history of a 150-year-old law firm. But I signed a non-disclosure agreement. I can't give
okay.
the name until it comes out in print. But it's been great fun talking to really smart, astute lawyers, and across the different disciplines of the legal world, and still learning a lot from the people I interview. Yeah, and who knows? how many more I have in me, but I still love what I'm doing. I'm healthy. Uh, and I don't know, there could be a few more left before I call it a day.
I love that. Well, I cannot wait to read your next book. And then secondly, I want to meet you in person. So I will make it, I'm putting it in the calendar. I'm going to come down and I'm going to visit you. And I just thank you from the bottom of my heart for jumping on today and telling some of these great stories and these gems. And I'm sure our audience is going to love it. And I'm sure that somebody's going to laugh at our conversation about Boo.
Thanks, Claire. Thanks.
Russ, thank you so much for coming on. You were a pleasure. All right, I'll see you soon.
Okay, take care.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Navigating No. I hope you found today's conversation just as inspiring and insightful as I did. We'd love your help to make it even better. So, if you enjoyed this episode, we would love to hear your feedback. And if you think someone else could benefit from hearing it, please share it and help us spread optimism and positivity. We release a new interview every Monday, so don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening.